I guess what I'm saying is that the oppressive state that you built did a really good job at feeling like an oppressive bureaucratic state by not giving me those tools. I want to explain a thing to you that is...
All right.
Okay.
Do it. Let's go.
Okay. Have you ever heard of the human resources term criticism sandwich?
That's like a compliment sandwich.
It is. It's essentially a compliment sandwich. And the basic way that you do this is if you have an employee where it's something's going wrong, right? You take them into a meeting and you sit them down and you compliment them on something that they're doing right. And then you address the thing that's going wrong, and then you end it by saying something positive. It's a criticism sandwich. And the general idea of this is to make it so that it's not an attack, but that you address that there's an issue going on. And to make it clear that they're a very valuable member of the team, and they do a lot of things right, and you want to recognize that they do a lot of things right, but we still have an issue, and we want to talk.
If they don't do anything right, you just make shit up.
You just say something very basic, like, it's nice that you arrive on time every day. Or, it's nice that you arrive only 5 minutes late. You just...
It is nice.
Yeah, boy, you keep the break room looking less messy than it usually does. That's really good. You always smile at the customers. We really appreciate that. Yeah, something very straightforward. And then at the end, I guess your basic idea is to just say, but you're doing great and we want you to succeed. Like, it's that kind of thing, you know. Very PR-ish, but it is a tactic that typically gets used in businesses for the very reason that you need to... Sometimes things ain't going great. That being said, Lucas Pope, I have a criticism sandwich for you. If people don't know, Lucas Pope is a fairly well-known game developer. He's an indie dev that created 2 games that are very well-known, Papers, Please and Return of the Obra Dinn. I have tried to play these very recently, and it's the reason why I wanted to do this little thing. And I wanted to do it as a criticism sandwich because I really don't want people to think that I'm going to just shit all over Lucas Pope. It really is not about that. So, Lucas, how are you doing? I know you're a big fan of the show. I wanted to tell you that I've played some of Papers, Please, and I played Return of the Obra Dinn, and I really appreciate the kind of outsider aesthetic that you have for those games, and they are definitely unique experiences. I think that that's really what I want to hit on. Very unique experiences, the kinds that I don't usually get to play, and I really appreciate that you tried that even down to the graphics level and the way that information is presented. That being said, could I get something of a UI, bud? Please. Just some kind of user interface so I know what is happening in these games. Okay, let's start with Papers, Please. Okay.
For the record, I have not played either, and I have seen Papers, Please.
Yes. Okay. So, let's start with Papers, Please. I'm going to try to articulate this. So, Papers, Please, very interesting idea. I like the idea of, like, you know, processing passports and looking at the data and trying to figure out what's wrong. And, you know, like, what's different between these different things. And on a basic level, that makes sense, and it's very interesting. I would really love it if I had a little bit more control over managing all of that paperwork than just having to click and press information from one side of the screen to the other with my mouse, because I basically just now have all these different papers cluttering up the screen that I also have to then move back to the other side of the screen. Like, if there was just, like, I don't know, maybe just one button so that I could just, like, pack all the stuff up and just put it back over on the other side of the screen. Or
I feel like the point, and Lucas Pope, if you're watching this, please feel free to comment and let us know. I feel like the point of this is to actually be more immersive with it.
Right.
Probably.
I understand this. Which is one of the reasons why I wanted to talk about this, because it doesn't feel as immersive if it gets complicated as to what I'm supposed to do. There's like
I'm wondering if you could do Papers, Please, but VR.
that would be interesting.
So
Now-
instead of having
now
all
I'm
the
just-
things on your desk, you actually have to like pick it up and look at
Yeah.
it, and then look at the person, look at it, and then
Yeah,
sort things out actually by hand.
right.
I think that would be
Yeah.
an experience.
The thing that happened to me several times playing the game, though, is that I could recognize that something was wrong with the paperwork. I did not know how I'm supposed to connect this thing to this other thing. Like, it got to be a point where it's like, okay, well, I can obviously see that the date of birth on here is it's here, but there's missing paperwork, and I know there's missing paperwork. How do I tell the game that I know that there's missing paperwork that he's supposed to have? And so, like, I'm trying to go through this training manual, and like, can I click this thing that says you're supposed to have this and click it to another thing to link those two ideas? If I need to scan somebody, I don't, like, does that automatically trigger? Or am I going to have to purposely click on something because it's not coming up for me? What am I doing here? And the problem, of course, with Papers, Please is that the entire time you're on the clock. So while I'm trying to figure out how these mechanics work, the timer is ticking, and you still have to process a certain number of people, and you don't get paid after a certain time in the thing. Now, I know the reason why you did that. Because,
Conceptually, I completely understand all of these things being the thing, because
Yes.
it's at its core, it's a simulation game.
yes.
You are simulating being this crossing guard. I would
Yes.
like to also see DMV, please.
Oh, yeah, it's
Because
basically
then
the
you
same
can be
game.
a work. Yeah.
DMV
Like, I
simulator.
understand. See, for me, it was, I heard of Papers, Please, and I saw a couple of people probably play it, and then I was like, oh, this is interesting. I would hate playing this.
Yeah,
Mostly because I don't like the stress of that time crunch with all the different things you need to do. That's not kind of what I go into games for.
right.
But I looked at it and went, okay, I get it. This is cool. It's telling a narrative and also making hard decisions
Right.
for you. So it's
Right.
a lot of like hard decision making. Whether you
Right.
let someone pass or whether you're not, or whether you,
Or you get a slip and you get written up
yeah.
for it, right? And then that
because you
that
also have
means-
to keep your family fed.
right. And
So
if you,
it's
you don't make enough money, and then you can't pay your rent, and then you die, or they haul you away. Now, I understand conceptually the reason why you do this is because you're trying to represent the level of bureaucracy that's going on here, like that it's tedium, that there's all of these different facets, and a lot of it doesn't even make sense. That well, now you need a special ticket today, and in order to do that, and a lot of that. But I am also aware that in the real world, some of this might eventually get organized or streamlined, even though there's a ton of bureaucracy there, so that I would be able to say, well, how do I access my manual? Well, I don't have to pull it out and then manually flip through the pages and then put it back. What I can do is I can hit a manual button, bring it up, so that it's there on the side of the screen, or, just like, rolls over so that I can just analyze it. And when you, like, say, well, we're getting a body scanner, I don't know. If there was just a button so that I could do a body scan, maybe I shouldn't have done one. Maybe I get written up for that, but at least it's then in my control rather than having to do certain things before it's available. And that would have been helpful, because it just gets tedious just trying to, like, open drawers, pull things out, put things back. I have to then I put everything back on the table and hand everything back to him. It's like, can I just say you're good to go and the stuff goes with him? He takes it and just wanders off. That's
supposed to be tedious. That's the point of it.
I understand that. But again, a little bit more of a UI would have helped me work through that tedium so it didn't feel unnecessary. And maybe that undercuts a little bit of what the game's trying to achieve. But if I don't know how to, like, interact with the game to do the thing they want me to do, I'm gonna eventually stop playing, especially because then my character dies, because I'm just getting rid up for all these slips because I haven't put everything back the way I wanted it to be, and it's just kind of organizationally bad, which again is supposed to be what's represented by this oppressive state. But when you're looking through all of these maps and you're trying to locate stuff, I'm trying to piece together a bunch of information. And if I'm piecing together a bunch of information, I'd imagine that there could be, like, literally some kind of a tab or some kind of a window specifically for some of that information to organize my thoughts. I guess what I'm saying is that the oppressive state that you built did a really good job at feeling like an oppressive bureaucratic state by not giving me those tools. But from a user standpoint, a little bit of an interface where I could open and close certain things or put stuff back would have been helpful from my experience specifically. Okay, Return of the Obra Dinn. Again, really neat idea. I like this idea of somebody going on and trying to figure out what happened to everybody on this boat. What I wasn't as thrilled about was that I could not really tell most of the time when I clicked on something that I was either going to investigate it or that I was going to time travel back in the past by clicking on it to a previous scene. And then sometimes you'll click on an element and you'll go back temporarily and they'll bring you back to the present. Sometimes there'll be a door that you go back through so that you can be in there for good. And then there's the logbook. Now, this is where actually you do have, like, a button to pull up the logbook. It's not specified. There's no really, like, user interface elements on the screen. But you can pull that up, and then you can take this picture of somebody, and you can try to piece it together with, like, how they died, where they died, etc., in order to do that. But when I go to click on an element, if there's multiple things that might happen, a little bit of an interface to say, what would you like to do? Would you like to travel back? Would you like to analyze it? Would you like to connect to this thing, to something in the book? Would have been a little helpful. It would have been just a little bit helpful. But again, I understand why you built the game that way, because having a hands-off, like, practically zero interface was supposed to be immersive to the experience that you were creating. However, for me, playing the game, it started to feel frustrating that I couldn't easily connect certain things with the way that the user interface was going, and that it was harder for me to do one thing to another thing in the way that it was framed. Like, UI is something that we talk about occasionally, but it does get glossed over. It's very easy. Like, I'm not saying I want you to become Crusader Kings. Okay, I can't. No, please, God.
It's too
no.
much UI.
So much UI, I can't even focus. But generally, what I look for in a UI that I'm going to engage with when I'm playing a game is that I can clearly understand what my options are and how to efficiently do those options in the game. With the Papers, Please example, I understand it a little bit more because the lack of a user interface and having to manually do everything is kind of part of the game. It's to be aesthetically correct to the game itself of being a paper pusher, middle management guy that has to deal with all of this headache and bureaucratic state. Obra Dinn, though, I feel could have probably used a few more of these elements so that I could quickly bring up manuals and stuff and put pieces together, because it is supposed to be a mystery where you're piecing together different parts of that mystery. Because when you're in a mystery, you kind of want to have those elements where it's like, here's the tools of your trade, and this is the kinds of things that you can utilize. Here's your inspection microphone. Inspection microphone? Here's your inspection spyglass, and you have, here's your notebook and all of those. And you do kind of get a notebook. The interactivity of it could have been more laid out so that I understood how to do this. Because, again, you're doing like a deduction thing. I put off talking about this for a while because I didn't want this to come across as me knocking Lucas Pope. Because I think that those games are really good, and for people who can understand the aesthetic quality, it's really unique. It's really unique and interesting stuff. But just from my perspective, the UI just got too confusing for me by not really being there to know how to do a lot of the basic stuff in the game, or to understand how I'm supposed to interact with the game. And if I can't figure out how I'm really interacting with the game to the best of my ability, I don't necessarily want to play it. And this is where we come to an impasse, essentially. But to finish off my criticism sandwich, I don't necessarily expect you to change anything, especially at this point. They're very old games. But just from my perspective, if you're wondering how I feel about it, I know you've been waiting for me to, chime in on this. It's been years, but you've been waiting for me to chime in on this.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Having a user interface I can quickly reference and work with is important for me when I'm working with playing a game. And I do like that you were trying to be hands-off with the user interface. I appreciate that. I've seen it in a lot of really good games. Dead Space is a great example of that, where there's basically no UI, there's no HUD, heads-up display, nothing like that. It's all but the information is all presented to you easily on screen. Like, it's presented, I know what my life total is because it's on the spine of my suit. I know what my ammo count is because it's literally right on a display, right on the gun. It's not in a heads-up display. So I appreciate that, but it still gives me a lot of information that I can utilize. And I just didn't feel like I was getting a lot of that information of, how I do things in the game. And it would have been, a couple hints here, or just just highlighting something that might be useful for this particular interaction so I know what I'm pulling or doing, or something would have been very helpful for me to play those games for longer than I actually did. Which is a shame, because when I was playing Return of the Obra Dinn and I was getting pulled back and forth from the past to the present to the past to the present and exploring this place, I started to see more of what might have actually happened, and it started to get really interesting. That of it's a little bit supernatural almost, But then ultimately I was yeah, but I don't feel like I have full control over figuring this out. But you're doing great, and I'd love to see what you do next. I'm hoping you make a third one, and if there is not much of a UI, I'm hoping I can at least figure out how I interact with game.
On a side note, I feel like you should try, if you have not, Shadows of Doubt.
Yeah, Shadows of Doubt is going to be the next one that I have to try. I know you really like that one. A lot of people really like that one. I'm probably going to enjoy it, because I like mysteries are fun. Mystery games are neat. So there you go. The internet can now get mad at me because I did not understand the reason why the UI... I tried to explain I understand why the UI is the way it is. I just didn't engage with it. That's the point. And while I understand it thematically, I just feel like it should be easier for somebody to really work with the game, so that there's a trade-off here of trying to make it thematically correct, but also to help engage players that might tune out of something very quickly. Like you said, you didn't want to play based on the gameplay that you had seen because it's not your type of game. I think there might have been quite a few people that were in that boat. They saw how it was playing and it wasn't working for them, so...
It's choice. It's absolutely a choice.
It is. Unlike your character in Papers, Please, who had no choice. Had to be a middle manager. What I guess I'll say is if you played either of these games, or if you do play either of these games, or you are Lucas Pope, hi. Big fan. But I wanted to, get your thoughts on it. Like, do you think that the UI should be that way because it's complex and because it's, in some ways, counterintuitive? Or do you see ways that you could improve upon that interface to make it easier to access for somebody who's just jumping in? You can let me know in the comments down below. Give me a criticism sandwich.
Especially if you're Lucas Pope.
Especially if you're Lucas Pope. Lucas Pope's criticism sandwich for me is, it's great that you talked about this. Fuck off. But it's nice that you talked about it.
Man. I hope that Lucas Pope watches this, sees the end of that, and actually comments that now.
Yep. Perfect. Deservedly so. I didn't make 2 games.
I
didn't make any games.
You haven't made any games.
I haven't made any games.
You've barely run D&D games.
My biggest qualification is legitimately that I've just been playing video games for 30-something years. That's pretty much my qualification.
Your minimal qualification is the fact you were HR. Let us know in the comments down below.
Yeah, let us know.
Got it.
You beat me to it, you bastard.